So yesterday, something interesting happened between some lay Catholic men in the traditional movement, and Matt started this off. He says, "A little help, please. Anyone know where I can find the official SSPX press release about Father Rostand scandal that is referenced in this Stella Maris report? It is not linked in the report and I can't find it online. Yesterday I made an inquiry with the SSPX but have not yet heard back. If this report is accurate, it sheds light on another element of the ongoing and horrific scandal that has devastated the lives of many children and threatens to seriously discredit the SSPX. I would appreciate your assistance verifying the report." Now, Matt is referring to this article that Christine Niles published on Stella Maris Media. If people will remember, there was some Catholics will remember Church Militant, which Christine Niles was part of, and they were reporting on church news for years, and also started reporting on the allegations of abuse that was coming out of the SSPX. And Christine Niles got a lot of abuse for reporting this, that she was I don't know how you can accuse her. She's reporting on what has happened. Now, I looked this up, and there's here the court reportings for this Abbé de Rosand, and he's in court, and three of his accusers, three men, they detail out very graphic. I'm not even going to read it out here in the podcast. I'm not going to read it out because it's so horrific. I wouldn't. The abuse that he called. But, the worst thing is he's asking the SSPX for help. He's asking 24 years ago. This priest is asking his superiors for help. In 2000, 2006 and 2013. I mean, he says, il annonce même d'être dénoncé auprès de la Fraternité Saint-Pierre en 1998 par lettres de ses supérieurs dans laquelle il avait écrit ses difficultés avec les enfants. So he's saying here, back in 1998, that he wrote a letter to his superiors. And he's told them 2000, 2006, 2000. This priest, years ago, making it known to his superiors about his problems. He should never been a priest. Never been a priest. Anyway, Jeff Caseman, he does this post after Michael Matt's post yesterday. 7 hours, and then 2 hours later, Jeff Caseman, who is member of goes to the SSPX chapels, makes this post. "I've seen some rumours." No, they're not rumours, Jeff. They are not rumours. They are on court records here in France. Okay? I presume it's France. It's in French. If not, if it's in... where does it say? He's accused of abusing minors in France, Switzerland and Spain. And he was also in America. So they are not rumours. And he's standing in court and admitting things. "I've seen some rumours on social media about allegations against a certain priest of the SSPX. Please remember that what you see on social media may not be true." That's right. What we see on social media may not be true. "Some sources have a long history of creating scandalous stories." Are you saying Christine Niles created a scandalous story? Are we honestly saying Christine Niles created this? I mean, it beggars belief, guys, in 2024, that you would think, come on. She's not in Church Militant now. She has her own media association. She's collected all of this data. She's not creating this. Scandalous stories that have no basis in reality. Well, here's the reality, guys. Go and look it up. Some sources will report gossip as if truth. Some of these same people will admit critical information so as to deceive the reader and create a worst possible impression. Finally, do not forget that we have many people on X who hate you, hate tradition, and despise the Holy Archbishop. They will screenshot your posts and comments and share them out of context to embarrass you, the society, and the church. Please be prudent when commenting on social media rumours and speculation. It is never wrong to pray for the victims of sexual abuse and to do acts of reparation for the grave sins of their abusers. Archbishop Lefebvre, pray for us. I just wanted to give my own thoughts about what was said there between Michael Mash and Jeff Caseman, because this impacts the whole church. The society has, 600,000 people who go to their chapels across the world. It's not a small organisation. And the Holy Father has given them faculties to licitly and validly administer sacraments. So to all intents and purposes, they are Catholic. The SSPX is Catholic. It's part of the Catholic Church. While some people may say schismatic, the reality is, to all intents and purposes, the church is moving towards regularising the SSPX's status in the church. And I know many good people to go to SSPX chapels. I know many good priests. So I just wanted to start off on that with that note. But I kind of reflecting here, when I see Jeff Caseman writing like this is exactly how we used to operate as Legionaries of Christ back 30 years ago. It's like looking in a mirror. Even the language that you're saying, finally, do not forget that there are many people who hate you, hate tradition, and despise the Holy Archbishop. It's a siege mentality. It's a mentality of siege, of, okay, no, you're right, we can't discuss this. Instead of first saying nothing, which will probably be the most prudent thing, but to say to people not to reason, not to think. Because that priest who abused in those countries was also operating in the United States. Could there be victims of his abuse in the United States? Men that are suffering from the actions of this priest. Because when the whole watershed came down around Father Marcial, when the bubble burst, it was, the extent of the abuse was so massive that it really shocked people. It really shocked people. Not only were the people, those men from outside the Legionaries of Christ, the ones that were sounding the alarm bell, there was a lot of priests inside the Legionaries of Christ who had been abused by Father Marcial and spent their whole life in the Legion. I mean, can you imagine the problem that was there? And it's not just one priest in the society. There's several priests. There's a priest in Mexico, an ex-priest in Mexico, and he was saying the same thing, that he was telling his superiors about his problems, and they weren't taking action. We have to acknowledge problems. You have to talk about these problems, and you need to reform. The church cannot go back to the structures and the way it operated in how it formed men for the priesthood. We're living in denialism. You cannot continue to send 18-year-old men, boys, into seminaries, young men into seminaries, do a propedeutic year and go through 7 years of intellectual formation without forming the heart. Men need their hearts formed before they ever start forming minds with theology and philosophy. You'd be better off sending men off to a 3-year program to work in communities, to work in the church, to work with priests, to have good discernment, good spiritual direction, good life of sacraments, in operating in communities, in parishes or in religious communities or something like that, before you ever take a step towards religious life or priestly formation or seminary formation. Given the world we live in, let's face it, guys, given the world we live in, the church will realise this had to realize this sooner or later. They had to come, you know, it has, because you cannot live with this cancer. And it can be avoided with good discernment, good spiritual direction, good formation, and maybe not rushing men into ordination. You don't need to ordain a man in 7 years or 10 years. There's nothing wrong with having 15 years of preparation. If the SSPX can't see this, if those that love the SSPX can't see this, you are falling into the same potholes that the rest of us fall into. And creating your own siege mentality in your own bubble is not going to help you. Is not going to help you. It's actually going to cause more problems in the long term. You need to deal with the problems you have and not create problems that you don't have. And Christine Niles, even though she's not in church militant, is highlighting things that we need to talk about. And she has Stella Maris Media. She's published these details. Does anybody think that you're going to go along now and accuse her, of making this up? Of attacking the SSPX? You know, I when I saw the attacks that the attacks that went towards her are so unchristian, so un-Catholic, it really made me question. It was exactly how we operated as Legionaries and as Regna Christi 30 years ago. There was no way that Father Martial was this way. And so everything had to be done to defend him. And so there was nothing that we would listen to. We were brought into a room. That when I saw Jeff Caseman's tweet, it reminded me of how we were cajoled and manipulated, and how the laity were cajoled and manipulated to protect the structures above everything, because it was an attack. It was, let's create a siege mentality. Let's create our bunker. And anything that comes at us, it's all an attack. It's all an attack. It's all an attack. You know, Father Martial grew up, you know, in the 1940s, 50s, 60s. A lot of the abuse, if you look at the abuse scandals in Ireland, are from priests and religious that were formed in a very traditional environment. Penny catechisms, Baltimore catechisms, weekly confessions. In the 40s, 50s, 60s? Do you not understand that the church has to change its way of forming men? And the first place a man needs to be formed is his heart. And you need good discernment of a wide team of people when you're pushing men forward for the priesthood. Otherwise, you do a disservice to that poor man by pushing him into a vocation where he shouldn't be. He's suffering, and his victims will suffer, because these men need help. And it's far easier to give help to a 19-year-old man or a guy in his early 20s. It's far easier to give help to them than to give it to them when they're in their late 30s, after they have years of problems behind them that have been raised up. I hope somebody with a bit of common sense in the SSPX will just realise, hold on, you need to reform how you form priests. Do you understand? I mean, the church is realising this. I mean, it is simple. We need to form hearts and minds of our young people and realise that the world we live in is not the world we would like to live in, but it is the world and we need good, strong human formation. Emotional formation, psychological formation, heart formation. You need good teams. You know, if a man has gone through a process of spiritual direction, confession, he's working in communities, there's wide consensus by a wide team of people. Look, we've known this man for a good number of years. He's been working on these church projects. He's been doing this. And now after 3 years of lay apostolate, which is full of prayer, which is full of spiritual direction, which is full of guidance, we see in him the qualities for him to proceed on to formation in the priesthood, to proceed on to ordination. You would save yourself a mountain of problems later on. But the problem is, the church is failing to recognise this area of human formation. Ireland had its own minute scandal. And they had kicking and screaming. They were dragged to reform their priestly formation. They had no choice because the men that they were pushing through the system were failing. If they had issues and they weren't addressed, they were failing. Very sad. Poor men and poor church. And sooner or later we realise the problems. So I only would ask Jeff Kissman, Michael Matt and the traditional movement to stop hammering Christine Niles for a moment and to actually take a step back. Take a step back, because it's not just that one priest. You know that it's not just that one priest. The leadership in the SSPX know that it's not just that one priest. They know they have a problem because it's various priests now that have mentioned this. We see it come out, and you can't just keep, okay, we're not going to talk about it. What happens to the victims? What happens to the victims? If you know what, sooner or later the victims all connect together and they say, oh, it's not 3, it's not 10. Oh, there's more. Yes, there's more. And when the bubble burst with Father Martial, we knew how many more there were. It's a lesson. It's a lesson that that Christ is using to purify his church. We need a priesthood focused on Christ, and that are men that are truly in there for the right reasons, that have the capabilities of living that vocation. And unless the church realises this, the church has to step back. You have to prepare men correctly. Never rush a man to ordination, ever. Never. There should be no set, it's 7 years to be ordained a priest. That is the most craziest rule I've ever seen in the church. There is no time limits on being you get ordained a priest when you're ready to be ordained a priest. When there's wide discernment done by those in helping you with your formation. I'm absolutely sure of this. I'm convinced of this. And if there's one group in the church maybe people should look at is, for example, the Opus Dei. The Opus Dei, most of those priests went through a lay formation, lay careers before they went on to the priesthood. There's something in that, preparing a man slowly. You know, you can give your life to the church without being in a seminary. Go through formation, get a career, work in the church, and then maybe be called to look at the structure that they have in place. It's not going to be perfect. But do you see, there's a reason why that they have a different way of forming. And maybe that's something that we should look at in the church and priestly formation. If the church doesn't learn, if the traditional movement doesn't learn, how will we move forward? Really, think about it. It's the Achilles heel that could come in and trip you up. Anyway, I would really ask Jeff and the rest, don't be going after Christine Niles. Don't be publishing tweets or, telling people not to see what's obvious. Reform, change the way you manage this. The SSPX superiors, they need to do this. Otherwise, sooner or later, it'll come back to bite them. With court cases, with class actions. It'll happen. The church needs to reform in this area of priestly formation. It has to happen. It has to happen. God bless you. Take care. Bye-bye.